Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known as we continue to shake our heads over the debacle at the House of Representatives. GOP members selecting a speaker is just not happening, is it? Including a vote, Matt Gaetz actually voted for Donald Trump to be Speaker of the House. But it is a not so subtle reminder that people like Kevin McCarthy, who wants to be Speaker so bad that he's gone through so much humiliation. He was among the election deniers and the elected officials who really championed the insurrection. Ironically, those are the same ilk, like Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz, are leading the charge against McCarthy on this second anniversary of the January 6th insurrection. Meanwhile, on that date 2 years ago, the Trump-inspired attempted coup of the U.S. government, 950 people have been charged in connection with the attack on America and American democracy. 18 were charged with seditious conspiracy, 284 with assaulting or arresting or resisting, I should say, an officer, 295 with obstruction of an official proceeding before Congress. And of course, the January 6th House Select Committee has referred criminal charges against the former president, Donald Trump. So we'll see how all of that shakes out. But this morning, the NAACP in Oakland, California is demanding a recount in the recent mayor's election due to a razor-thin margin of victory of 677 votes, an unusually high number of disqualified votes, and widespread confusion surrounding ranked choice voting. As of December 2022, 63 American jurisdictions have ranked choice voting in place, reaching approximately 13 million voters. This includes 2 states, 2 counties, and 59 cities. Military and overseas voters cast ranked choice voting ballots in federal runoff elections in 6 states. 51 jurisdictions use ranked choice voting in their most recent elections, and 6 more will use it in their next election. So what exactly is ranked choice voting? Why is it so controversial? And does it work? We speak this morning with Al McFarlane of Insight News, and we also have with us Andrea Carter of the Cincinnati Herald. Good morning, Al and Andrea.
Good morning.
Al, now you're in a place in the Minneapolis area where there is ranked choice voting. First of all, what exactly is ranked choice voting, and why is it so controversial?
Well, let me sort of share what the philosophy of it is. The idea is that ranked choice voting could give or should give voters a chance to choose as many or as few candidates as they would like, from their least favorite to their favorite, as a first choice, second choice, and so on. And if there's like, say, a single seat election, a candidate has to receive about 50% or 50% plus one of first choice rankings in the first round to win. If nobody wins the majority support, then an instant runoff, quote unquote, second round takes place. In that second runoff, the candidate with the fewest first choice votes is defeated, and those ballots now count for those voters' second choices. So this process continues until one candidate reaches 50% plus one. The idea holds in multi-seat ranked choice elections as well. And the idea is that it doesn't waste any vote because it provides what they call proportional representation taken as a whole. The group of winners accurately reflect the voters' will. That's the thought. So that's what it is. It's presented as a most cost-effective and efficient way to ensure that winners have broad voter support and to eliminate spoiler and strategic voting dynamics. So in a nutshell, here are the key points. Ranked choice voting is intended to give voters more choice and more power. It requires that candidates build a broad majority coalition to be effective to win. It requires and encourages positive campaigning and civility. I mean, you can't go and say the guy running next to me is a bum because you might beat his supporters if he doesn't or she doesn't make it. You want to be civil in addressing the value each of us can bring to the campaign. And it also solves theoretically the spoiler problem and promotes inclusive, diverse representation in elections. Finally, the idea is that ranked choice voting can reduce polarization and break through gridlock. That's like we have gridlock in Washington right now. So that's the background. It's working in Minnesota. Minneapolis and St. Paul both use ranked choice voting, and I think use them effectively.
Wow. So, Andrea, I don't know how much you've had a chance to cover elections with ranked choice voting, but the way Al describes it, what's your feeling based on how Al just described it? Is that something that could work?
I think it could work if you have everyone educated enough to understand what it means. I mean, in Cincinnati, we don't have ranked choice voting, but we have for city council where all 9 seats are up for re-election this year. In fact, everyone is the highest vote getters gets 1 through 9. And that, that's sort of like close to ranked choice voting, but we don't take everyone's second or third or fourth choice. It's just everyone who votes for whoever, then that's it. Whoever's the top vote getter might become vice mayor and then on down. So it's kind of like a popularity contest. Ranked choice voting, actually, I can see it ends the chaos. It's a little bit more organized voting system, so to speak, except for when something like what's happening out in Oakland is going on and someone makes a mistake, then you have a hard time correcting that mistake if you have officials who don't want to correct it. And I think that, there are good points and there are bad points. I've covered a number of elections over my career, and it very rarely was it ranked choice voting. So it's something that's come up over the last 20 years or so that is gaining popularity because everyone doesn't like the chaos. I mean, what's going on in Congress right now? If they had ranked choice voting, we might have a House Speaker right now. So we may not be the person you want, but at least we'll be able to move forward with business. So
11 strikes, you're out. No, he's still going.
I know the record is 130 ballots.
133.
Oh, I'm sorry, 130. Well, see, I had 130 right. But I'm just like, no one's going to sit through that. Maybe way back when they did, but this.
But isn't that, and we don't want to get off course here, Al, but isn't that a strategy that is being employed very effectively right now by the Democrats with the constant voting, of course, for Hakeem Jeffries. Of course, you wouldn't expect them to vote for a Republican as you wouldn't expect a Republican to vote for a Democrat. But the 212 votes, I mean, he still remains the closest person to that speaker chair. And that's because they have held out. They are not budging, just like the Freedom Caucus on the other side is not budging. at least those 6. They understand there's some sort of deal that is going to be brokered this morning. It looks like a deal, but this deal is not expected to include the Freedom Caucus, which means that he'll still be at least 6 votes short. But Democrats are doing a good job of holding out. It could flip on them, Al.
Sure, but I think the idea is that if ranked choice voting was in place at the House of Representatives, the 2 candidates at the bottom, I think Brother Donald, and I think they've had a couple of different other
Hearn
listed, those votes would automatically be reassigned to a top vote getter. Theoretically, that means Hakeem Jeffries, right? Or they'd be assigned to somebody else that those 5 people chose as their second or third choice. And so if these are the Republican, what was it, 5 holdouts, the group,
6.
It's 20 altogether, but 5 is the magic number. But if those 20 all had the leading Republican candidate as their second choice, he'd be the Speaker of the House. So that's what the difference is. This process of ballot after ballot after ballot after ballot would not take place. Let me show some more information about, or share some more about, what Minnesota is saying. Like 5 Minnesota cities currently use ranked choice voting, and they started here in 2006 in Minneapolis and St. Paul in 2009. In Minneapolis, 65% of the voters supported ranked choice voting. In St. Paul, about 53% supported it. And the reporting says that following the implementation of ranked choice voting in 2013 in Minneapolis, that ranked choice voting helped produce the most ethnically diverse and gender balanced city council, with the first Somali, the first Latina, and first Hmong American candidates elected. In 2017, the number of candidates who were women or people of color or from different political parties was an all-time high. In St. Paul, the second place votes helped elect the first Hmong city council member in 2013 in one ward, and the first female council member in 2015. And so it says that ranked choice voting helped elect the city's first African-American mayor, Brother Carter, in 2019. And so this is having an impact, and our people are using it to our advantage.
Well, we spoke with NAACP Political Action Chair Allie Whitehurst about the organization's concerns about ranked choice voting there. And she mentioned several issues, including lack of transparency with the algorithm used by the registrar's office. Also, the challenge of seniors, getting seniors to understand how to cast their votes. She said she even made some mistakes herself. Let's take a look at what Allie Whitehurst had to say.
Confusion by a number of our seniors who were really surprised, at the results. And so out of respect and response to them, it's like, well, we need to really look into this.
Nearly 3,100 votes were considered overvotes, and they were not counted. And overvotes, voters selected more than one candidate in the same ranking. And so this is where things get kind of sticky too, right? With this ranked choice voting.
I was not living in Oakland when ranked choice voting. It was my residence, but I wasn't working in Oakland. And I overvoted the first time because I said, well, this is the candidate I want. And so that candidate is going to get all 3 of my votes. And that's what I did. And so without really understanding the process, that's what people are doing. One of our seniors who is 95 years old, we were on the phone for over an hour completing her ballot. And she said at the end, she said, if you hadn't helped me, I certainly wouldn't have known what to do. And then another who is 98, when I had a conversation with her, she said, oh yeah, I put my ballot in the mail. she said, and she named the party that she always votes for.
Right.
But then in the mayoral races, it's nonpartisan. So she did not complete anything on that section of her ballot, which means that her ballot wasn't counted because it was a blank. And so these are the kinds of issues that ranked choice voting has caused. And so we want to make sure that no one is disenfranchised by a process that is intended to be a fair way of voting. Rights is so important to us. And therefore, we want to make sure that every person votes and that vote is counted. The future of ranked choice voting, personally, and then I don't speak for the organization, and it's because I'm a senior as well, it's a little bit confusing. And so I think it's certainly worth another look, and to make sure that every citizen feels that they are a part of a system that is fair.
Yeah. Before there's several ways to dissect that. I mean, she made some great points and expressing her concerns. I just wanted to answer a question here. Miss Claudette Perry asks, does anyone know how long the House is allowed to continue this nonsense? Theoretically, this can go on until the next election in 2024. There is no limit on the time there, unfortunately. That's just the way it is. And in fact, in the meantime, the clerk who clerked for Nancy Pelosi is currently recognized as the de facto Speaker of the House. So, which also raises some other issues we've talked about in this show this week. If the president and the vice president, there's an incident with them, that clerk is now the president of the United States of America. So it's something that's really, that makes this process with Kevin McCarthy and these Republicans, much more than just a joke. It's really not a joke. It's laughable how they can't get themselves together, but in all actuality, because they have the majority in the House, it's not a joke. There's a lot of business that can't get done, that's not going to get done. And if there's an emergency, Congress cannot act. But I want to go back to
before you do, Stacey. The other thing to note about the DC situation is that for, I think, the first time, 2 Black candidates are being considered to be the Speaker of the House.
Well, one of them is really one of them is considers himself Black. The other one,
he doesn't. The visual.
He's delusional.
That 2 Black men are being considered to be the Speaker and voted on, and that's it's brand new as well.
Well, I thought it was very and I know here we go off. We'll get to Allie Whitehurst's statements in a moment, but I just thought it was more showmanship when you had these MAGA people stand up and say, "Oh, how great it is that 2 Black candidates," right. And then you had the one quoting Martin Luther King. I just thought it was almost blasphemy for him to get up and do that. To them, it was a joke.
Yeah. Sure.
So they have no intentions on having Byron Donalds. As much as they hate McCarthy, they have no intentions on having Byron Donald as the Speaker. And that showed when one of the members voted present, which is a dangerous vote for the Republicans at this point. And the other member, Matt Gaetz, voted for Donald Trump, which is, was what this is all about anyway, right? Donald Trump.
Well, the story in art, where art imitates life or life imitates art, is the Putney Swope movie. I don't know if you remember that, Putney Swope, where a Black guy was on the board of directors of a white company, and the owner dies. His board members shove his body aside and take a vote, and everybody thinks they're going to give just their one vote to be the fair person to the Black guy. black guy gets the vote, runs the company. There we go. Stranger things. But
Well,
you know,
why a present vote is dangerous for Republicans, just by the way, if 6 of them vote present, then the threshold comes down to 212. And guess who has 212 votes?
yeah, already.
Hakeem
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Yeah.
To me, I think Representative was it Lee? I forgot the congressman from Hawaii. When he was showed taking his bag of popcorn in for the show, I think that's pretty much what it has been. I mean, it's a sad, serious show. That at time that the speeches, each time there's a nomination for Kevin McCarthy, I get sick to my stomach because more and more I'm like, when do you stop? If this man, who's quote a leader, can't even get his caucus together after so many negotiations and still can't get the votes, then the majority needs to move on and get somebody else because he can't get the job done.
Well,
So
the way they currently constituted is Kevin McCarthy or no one. That's the way they is currently constituted on the Republican side. And I've said it. I know many agree. Hate blinds you, and in this case, let's, as the Democrats are doing, let the hate play out, because it could result in what's what they call it, unintended consequences. So
I think what I find interesting is the unification of the Democratic Party. Even though there are, so many factions in the Dems, when it comes to unity, purpose, and they see the bigger picture. They get it. And I think that's
finally, right?
Yeah, finally. But I think the fact that we're looking at history, we're looking at unity, but also the fact that, as Hakeem Jeffries said, they made this mess, let them clean it up. It is not our responsibility because they tried with the last Congress to help fix some things where the Republicans were in the minority and they refused to do it. And they're like, okay, we're here about business. And, with everyone stepping up and making outrageous statements, I was just like, really? I mean, especially for today. So,
you make a very good point about the unity, and Al, perhaps you can speak more to this, to Hakeem Jeffries. I'm going to use the term that people use in the street. Hakeem is no joke.
No.
And this is what the Democrats long needed. They needed a Hakeem Jeffries. This guy has risen up the way you expect leaders to rise up. And he's got that caucus in order. He really, really does. He has told them to prepare to stay over the weekend. And when they vote, I don't know if you've noticed this. I don't know if you've been watching. I mean, after a couple of rounds, some folks like, I'm not watching this anymore. But as a journalist, as a reporter, I got to watch. But when they stand up and vote for Hakeem Jeffries, it's all you got to hear them call out his name. The different members. It's like going to or watching an NBA basketball game and a player is being introduced for the first time. I mean, they are so excited. Let me use this term: excitedly united behind.
I think they understand that this is a teachable moment for Black people, for Democrats, and for the world. The world spotlight, the world stage element of this thing is not lost upon them, and they have come into this understanding that they can educate and motivate and excite, and also cast a light on the true negative intent of obstructionist and supremacist white power strategies. So by seizing this moment, by not going along just to get along, they are having a master class on what it means for our democracy to come forward, and also our stake in it, and our position, our role, and our potential as leaders shaping the direction of the nation. I wanted to flash back on one thing too, when you talked about Ali, is it
Ali Whitehurst
comments, and I pulled up a note that reported in one of our local TV stations about ranked choice voting, confirming what she said. This article says, be careful that you don't accidentally give the same ranking to multiple candidates, because that would nullify that part of your ballot. That's a problem. And that's why education is so important, that
She
we
talked about
spend
that.
time
Yep.
to teach them. And it
Yeah.
says, if you ranked two people number one, that will cause those votes not to count, according to Minneapolis elections director Aaron Grossman. So it says, as you feed your ballot into the tabulator machine, it'll actually alert to that issue, and you can tell a election judge there's a problem with it, and they can help you fix it. But if you don't know, you don't know. So that's the area where public
Well,
education.
Al, with all of the voter suppression laws and the way we know they failed to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. We know all the gerrymandering. It sounds very dangerous. And this is, I guess, Allie Whitehurst's point too, particularly when you talked about education. You know, ranked choice voting is relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
It requires some serious education there, because as she mentioned, you know, in one case, she mentioned to us that it was a senior citizen in this case. She only liked one candidate, so she wrote one candidate. Well, her ballot was not legitimate then. It was illegitimate then.
Right. Yeah.
Voting has become a little bit more sophisticated in the 21st century than ever before. And, you know, and I think it's on everyone to educate everyone about strategy, where people, and there are a lot of people who don't understand strategy and why they need to think about it. And I mean, like for us in Cincinnati, even though we don't have ranked choice voting, we have 9 votes for city council, though we are educated to only vote for 5. Because if you vote for all 9, your votes are going to be null and void, because you might pick someone from the bottom 20 who will never get up to the top 10. But if you at least choose 5, you know, at least those 5s will fall into place, so you know what you're getting. And I think, again, it's about education. It's about how to vote, why to vote a certain way. And, you know, our seniors, sometimes because it takes them a little bit more to understand the process, we need to work with them a little bit more. Not everyone's going to get that explanation. But, you know, when I go in and vote, I go in with a strategy. I don't just vote a straight ticket. I don't think about it. There are some people who vote that way. Ranked voting makes people think about what they're doing, where people didn't have to think before. And I think that's what's throwing a lot of people to understand, oh, I want this person, but I don't have a second or third choice, where you never really had that before. And for Black people, you know, we have our choices, but sometimes our votes don't get what we want. And that's what older people are used to. So then you tell them you may have a chance to get what you want, you just got to do it differently. It can be a little confusing. Well, and I think we just have to do a little bit more education.
Yeah, and they have all of these disqualified ballots over in Oakland, and these uncounted ballots that they want counted. The NAACP is paying, I think they said $21,000 a day or $24,000 a day or something of that nature. And
no end date.
No end date. However, now Al and Andrea, and this is about the mayor's race there. The mayor is scheduled to be sworn in a couple of days. Yes. Now, what happens if they do get that recount and it finds out that, okay, this guy won, you didn't win. Now you've sworn this guy, and what happens?
That's a good question.
It's a bigger miss. I mean, the only good news, I did read up on when you called me about this, I did read up on the situation, and I saw now one of the county officials has requested a recount. They have brought it up, and I think so. Hopefully, they'll get that recount and go through, because it is the registrar's mistake on this. And I don't think anyone should be sworn in until the mistake is corrected, and or someone sues and gets that filed immediately to stop the process so it can be corrected.
Yeah, there's a legitimate question around who the winner is. I agree that it seemed to make sense, let me say it that way, that they wouldn't swear anyone in until it's resolved. you just don't want to hold off swearing in just under any circumstance because somebody won't concede. This is not a matter of someone not conceding, but it's a matter of votes not being counted, right?
And I think the fact that you have to give the registrar credit for admitting that there was a wrong algorithm used in the counting of the ballots, and the fact that he came out and said it, there should have been an automatic stop. Let's recount, but it didn't happen that way because we don't know what the ulterior motive is of the other officials. So, and I think the fact that now one county official stepped up and said, no, we need to do this. I think that's going to get more momentum. Well, I should say, I hope it gets more momentum to correct the situation. Otherwise, they become just like the deniers.
In Minneapolis, I'm looking at a report again. It says that so far, the history of ranked choice voting here in Minneapolis in the mayor's race has never been determined by second choice votes. It means that whoever got the most first choice votes was ahead. And after the first choice round ended up winning all of the other rounds as well. And so that's been the story here, but that's not what's happening in California. It's so close there. And that's important. But let me say one more thing, Stacey. Mm-hmm. I think this is an opportunity for Black newspapers to step up and lift up the importance of the role we play in educating our people. And we have to make a demand of city and county and state governments that they invest the resources required to fully utilize the access that we deliver to Black voters and to our community, to voters in our districts, so that we do the public education. We create new narratives, new awareness, new understanding, eliminate the ambivalence or the lack of clarity, but that should be done as part of the business of civic engagement. And our units of government, local, state, county, federal, ought to be prepared to invest the money required so that we have a pervasive, ongoing education system that's done, process or campaign, that's done on a business-like basis, buying space in our newspapers, on our radio stations. That's what I think.
Well, I don't think you get any pushback from your colleagues at the Black Press at all on that one, Al. But it's true, and we saw Dr. Chavis lead this 10 million more voter campaign. We see the Black Press has been heavily involved in trying to educate folks about things like voting and other matters. We talked earlier this week about the Rolling Stone magazine 200 greatest singers of all time, and who put that list out. We talked a little bit to Stephanie Mills the other day, and as she was very blunt about it. She's like, first of all, white folks did it. And she said they can't sing. She had some really interesting things to say about that. We'll probably bring you more of that in the near future of what Stephanie had to say on a number of topics. But with that, the point is, we need our own list.
That's right.
Right.
Yes.
You can't tell us. We are the originator of soul. We are the originator of R&B. We are the originator of great singing, great entertaining. We need a list of not just singers. We need a list of actors and actresses from the Black Press. Look, Black Press, 196 years now, right? We have every right and every, we have built something where our list should be the premier list. We see all these end-year lists and these mid-year lists, and what counts to our people should come from the Black Press.
I think really true. Think about how many products that we use today were created by Black people. We don't even think about it. The traffic stop, number one. We all pay attention to the traffic stop because, green means go, red means stop. But a Black person invented it. And other, top choices. Even the inventors for Procter & Gamble, some of their top products we now use every day. Tide, Pringles, Bounce, things like that. We may not know who invented them until it comes out, but we're using them. And I agree that we should have our own list. and remind everybody this is who invented what, and these are all the great inventions.
Yeah.
And I think
Because who are you to tell us what's the best, right?
And I mean, we both have. There should be a local list. There should be a national list. Because we're so talented in so many different ways.
So many different places.
Even down to the guy who is the maintenance guy of some school building, knows how to fix something without having to go to get an expert. He knows how to work it.
Oh, don't we all have one in our neighborhood?
Yes.
We got Uncle Charlie somewhere.
Yes.
Right?
I mean, it's
carburetor goes, Uncle Charlie got you.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we are a group of people who know how to take adversity and fix it. Yeah. And we're not afraid of it. And I think that's the legacy of what Hakeem Jeffries is building in the House. The fact that he has worked and everyone knows him. And, like you said before earlier, how they stand up and say his name. The fact that it's like how the Buffalo Bills respected and crowded around Damar Hamlin when they were working on him on the field. When have you ever seen a football team gather around and with the opposing team praying for him, but protecting the site of him being worked on until he could go to the hospital? You've never seen that type of respect.
Andrea, we're hearing some pretty encouraging news out of Cincinnati on the Buffalo Bill player.
Yes, he's awake and he spoke. He is recovering very, very well. I know that the NFL has announced that they're just going to
they're not going to play that game.
They're not going to play that game, which really truly I didn't even see that game happening. The looks and the shock on the faces was unbelievable, but I'm glad he's recovering. This city has been awash in blue in support of Damar Hamlin. We've had people out praying for him outside UC Hospital. He has been the talk of the town, praying for his recovery. We're very glad that he woke up and spoke. So that means, he's not suffered as much damage as everyone feared that he had. And it's just going to be interesting to see how much he recovers and go forward.
Yeah. Just want to mention, as we were talking about lists, Power 96 writes in that is why I don't pay any attention to the Grammys, American Music Awards, Billboard, or any of that stuff. And Power 96, I've been with you on that for so long. I can't tell you the last time I sat down and watched the Grammys or the American Music Awards, or certainly the Billboard Awards. I have never watched. But Al, I think you wanted to throw something in there too.
I'll just come back to the question of understanding the power and the role that we play as Black media professionals in creating narratives that allow our people to envision a world, a strategy, an outcome in which we are the winners in the story. And this idea of winning doesn't necessarily have to be exactly how the other people define winning, but something that comes out of our own sense of ethics, of morality, a sense of hope and expectation, our sense of legacy, our sense of history. We simply must continue as we have, but expand our drive to shift the narrative in the nation and in the world, to take it out of the hands of the few who've crafted arrangements that disadvantage, that destroy, that marginalize our people, and to pass power to the people the way that Black people have passed democracy, the meaning of democracy, made it come alive out of slavery. We have broken through the duplicity and the arrogant deception of supremacist thought. And out of us arises Hakeem Jeffries and a vista that will change the direction of our country and of the world. But it's up to us, the communicators, the scribes, to advance stories, interpretations, analyses. At the end of the day, create narratives who we know will result in the continued elevation of the idea of our humanity, our dignity, and healing for us and the world itself. My final point is that each of these situations are situations that we should use to make a claim on the public treasury to get the resources we need to explain the world to our people first, and in doing so, explain the world to the world from our point of view. And the money is there. We got to claim it and go get it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, as we have reached that 2-year anniversary, this is one of those where will you win type things. I still, folks will think about 9/11 and what happened on January 6th. There's an argument that it was worse than 9/11 because this was a domestic thing. This was a president, a U.S. president attacking America.
Mm-hmm.
And with that said, Andrea, what 2 years now, what was the biggest thing you took away or still take away from January 6th?
Well, I would say the biggest, how precious our democracy is. And it made me a much prouder citizen to know that the January 6th committee took the time to investigate, to find out what happened, and put together a report giving us a blueprint of what we need to watch for going forward so it doesn't happen again. There will be someone down the road who was slicker, much more charming, and much smarter than Donald Trump, who can try and do this again and might succeed. So we need to watch the signs, watch, the people who are complicit. It also made me appreciate democracy more, our democracy, and what we stand up for. And, I may not have an American flag showing and waving off my car, but it makes me a proud citizen to go to the ballot box and put my vote in and say, yes, it is important for me to give my opinion, whether that person wins or not. I'm proud to say that I supported someone who stood up, who wanted to be a public servant. And I think most important of all, I think we need to, the most important thing that January 6th proved is that our people are more educated today about the political process than they have been in a long time. Because they don't teach it as well as they used to in our schools.
Yeah, we know there's no civics, right?
Right. And I mean, there needs to be civics classes again to understand the process. And also make the believers, or whether you're in a lower socioeconomic status or a higher, your vote counts. It doesn't matter how much money you put in. At the end of the day, it's about what the people want, not a small group who think they can force your hand and change something when someone doesn't get their way, like a little kid, like a little brat.
Al, what's your takeaway as we are sitting here on the 2nd-year anniversary of that attempted coup on the U.S. government?
Well, I'd love to share my cover. If you can pull it on the screen, this is what we did recently.
Hold it up, Al. Let us see it.
Okay, here we go. And it's again about the image, the narrative, and I think it's powerful. This is a teachable moment. And the message here is that our congressional leaders are at the center of managing, navigating, chairing the initiative to save our country, and have done so, I think, in a remarkable, admirable way. Our job as media is to normalize that leadership role that we have performed and will perform in the future as well. So I think that my takeaway, though, is that it's a demonstration that we have to disabuse white people of the idea that the world is their idea, that they created the world and that it belongs to them. They're operating from the sense that if they thought of it or stole it or whatever, it must be okay and sellable. Our response has to be that we know the world is owned by no one. And it's organization, it's planning and organization that prevails. And our philosophy around organization must remain that we support our people, the least of these, right? That nobody's healed until everybody is healed. And that's a different orientation from the hierarchical strategy of their thought process. So I think that we simply have to keep telling ourselves and our readers and the world that there's a different way, and bring that forward day by day, story by story, week by week, in our newspapers, in our commentary, in our social media platforms. And I believe that we're going to prevail in doing that.
And I think also that the bigger issue is not only recognize who our true leaders are and who our true supporters of democracy is, but also do not be afraid to support someone who's different from you.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, just because they don't look like you does not mean they don't have your best interest at heart. And I think a lot of what has happened is out of fear of the change of where the world is going, of who's in charge. And unfortunately, get used to it. We're not going away. People of color are not going away. You know, the world is changing. People who have never had to accept the difference before now are being forced to. I think look at what's happening over in England. They're being called on point where they've never been called on before. So I think there's a change in the air where people are going to accept it or not accept it. And I think it's our responsibility to just say, you know what? Live with it. We have, and we go right on. We just pivot and we continue to pivot and we keep living our lives. We keep doing our day to day. We do what makes us happy. We pay our bills, we pay our taxes. And at the end of the day, whether something get to us or not, we still thrive and survive. And I think that's our legacy. We know how to survive in the worst case scenario. We're still here.
Yeah, I just remember it being sort of almost like Roots. When Roots came out, I was in forget what grade I was in, but I had never really heard the word nigger before Roots, right? And folks became, because of Roots, that word became people were very easy to throw that word around from my memory, right? And the insurrection caused, at least until all of the arrests started happening, but it caused the Karens to really come out. The insurrection caused the red hat, MAGA hat wearing folks to really come out and show their true colors. That's what I remember. And in addition to the fact that thinking about all of the Black Lives protests that went on, the demonstrations that went on, and how the only time you saw any type of violence was when someone else instigated that violence against those Black Lives demonstrators. Here, you saw, as Power 96 keeps saying, the complexion for the protection. You saw how easy it was for people of a different ilk to be able to walk into a government institution, not just a government building, but an institution, and do what they wanted to do, right? With little resistance.
Yes.
It reminds me of when I'm thinking about taking trips. Goodness grief, I can't go there and by myself. I'm Black, whereas a white person can go just about anywhere they want without worrying about any type of repercussions, at least the same repercussions that we have to worry about. That's where my mind goes. And, I'm a little nuts anyway, but.
Well, you're in the right place. As you say that, it reminds me of two stories. One is my wife and I used to get up in the morning, like at 4 or 5 in the morning, and go walk in the wintertime through the Skyway system. We've got a very extensive Skyway system in downtown Minneapolis. We can walk for 45 minutes one way, 45 the other way. One morning, we saw this kid, maybe 2 years old or 3, walking by himself at 4 in the morning in a Skyway. So we looked at each other and said, "What is this?" And a block later, the mom and another baby in a stroller were walking. So we said, we'd never allow our children to be out of our sight in a Skyway in downtown Minneapolis. What's the lesson? The lesson is this child is being taught by this freedom that he owns the skyway. Read, he owns the world. That's their orientation, ownership, and you are okay anywhere you are. The other lesson like that is that I was in Ghana, up in the mountains, coming out of, I think, a Bury or some town, going back down to the city. And I saw two white girls walking down the road at midnight. And so Karens want to tell you they're fearful. They're not. I can tell you that my wife and her girlfriend wouldn't be walking down any street at midnight, probably anywhere in the world. And particularly not, where we have been conditioned to think danger exists. So part of this thing, Stacey, is to uncondition, to what's the word? I've used it. I'm using it in my shows coming up in the future. To decolonize our mind. We have an obligation to decolonize our own perception, our feeling, by rediscovering our own knowledge. So let me share one more thing with you real quick here, and that is, in that regard, this is, from my point of view, an innovation. Is it coming up? Can you see it?
Not yet. There we go. There we go.
So what we're doing is presenting stories in several different languages. A section, we call it Afro-Descendientes. I'm Afro-Cuban, Afro-Jamaican, so I've got that connection to Afro-Latino culture. I have a writer in Colombia and one in Brazil, and we're translating stories, a story, just one each week, into 7 different languages. Spanish, more Black people speak Spanish than English in the Western world. Portuguese, 100 million Black people in Brazil who speak Portuguese. We need to know each other and talk to each other. I also write this article in Somali because Minnesota has a phenomenal Somali population, the largest population of Somalis outside of Mogadishu in the world. Of course, many of us come out of the Yoruba, Western Africa experience. So this is in Yoruba. We also present this in French. And what's the idea? It's an innovation. The idea is that we have to begin to recondition ourselves to know that we own and have access to the world through a variety of idioms, and begin to do that knowing that most people are not going to get it now, but we can refamiliarize ourselves with the possibility of seeing things differently, explaining things differently, and not rely on the master's tools to respond to our need to dismantle the apparatus that they have created to contain, control, and marginalize our people. So that's where we're going from my point of view.
Okay. Gotcha, Al. Wow. Al broke it down. Thanks so much, Al McFarlane. And don't forget to check Al McFarlane out. Conversations with Al McFarlane, 1 p.m. Eastern, I believe, each weekday.
1 p.m. Central. I think it's probably 2 Eastern.
2 Eastern. Yes. I know Al has many fans of that conversation that he has each day. So don't forget to check him out on these same channels and on Insight News' site as well. And don't forget to check out Andrea Carter and the Cincinnati Herald.
And also we do have a Chocolate News podcast.
There you go.
On weekly. It comes out every Friday. We just talk about different stories, and we have guest interviews as well. So we are watching and talking about what's going on in the world. So check us out. We're having a good time with it.
And where again can folks find that Chocolate News?
You can find it on any streaming platform. We're on Apple, Spotify. I can't think of them all, but we're on all the streaming platforms.
Yes.
And so, just look for our name, Chocolate News, the Cincinnati Herald, and go from there. So
there you have it. Well, thank you all for joining us, Andrea and Al, of course. And thank you all for watching and supporting Let It Be Known. Check out our YouTube page, subscribe, and share it, because we got some great content coming up that we're sure that you'll enjoy. And if you don't enjoy it, we know that we'll hear from you on that too. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great and safe weekend, and we will see you next week.